Barbie has broke the internet yet again with the debut of its very first Autistic Barbie, complete with headphones, a talker device, and limbs that are adjustable just for stemming. While I would like to count this as a win for the autism community, unfortunately, the involvement with ASN does give me a little bit of pause. We're going to dive into all that and more today, including a unboxing of Autistic Barbie here on the Alethea Project. First, we are going to start with our unboxing, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the things that I really do like about representation when it comes to what Barbie has done with this very cool Autistic Barbie. So bear with me here. We're going to open her up and check out the features. How many strings do they have on this thing? So here we have Autistic Barbie, and there are a couple of key features that they decided to include that I think are really cool for representation purposes. So the first is going to be these noise canceling headphones here. They've got a super cute little like bee on them. Obviously they're branded. And noise canceling headphones are actually a tool that a lot of people with autism utilize for sensory sensitivities, and so that is super cool. And then they also have given her I think that's a fidget spinner. Yes, a fidget spinner, which is fun. Fidgets come in all shapes and sizes. This is a classic early 2000s spinner. Used to play with them back when I was a kid. I don't know. Anyway, the dress they also listed as a special feature, I guess because it's made of like super soft fabric, which is sensory friendly. And you also will notice it doesn't have like a whole lot of seams to it. It's just kind of like one straight piece. So that's kind of cool. And then she has got a little talker device. So this is going to it's going to have different buttons on it, and you probably can't see it. I probably just messed with your focus there. But anyway, it has little buttons on it to where you can express feelings. It's got the alphabet. It's got lists for like family members, temperature, different things like that. So that's pretty cool. This is accurate to how it actually looks in real life. And then the last feature that she has is limbs that are movable. So you can see it kind of moves here. Well, at the wrist, and then also at the elbow. And the YouTube videos that I was watching earlier in preparation for this video explained that the reason they gave her movable limbs like that is so she could actually stem, because hand flapping is a pretty common stem for folks who have autism. So that is pretty neat. So yeah, all really neat features, very helpful inclusion-wise. If you're gonna get a kid a toy that represents autism, I do feel like this is a pretty accurate representation, like generally speaking. So yeah, that was fun. The first unboxing on the Alethea project. And the reason that I kind of wanted to take time to, first of all, show you guys what the Autistic Barbie looks like, but also talk a little bit about the project in general, is because my biggest hesitation with this project is honestly more due to the partnership with the Autistic Self Advocacy Network and less actually to a Barbie. Because for a toy company, I think they did a really good job, and they are one of a few different child-featured production companies that have done very good representations of the autism community. Sesame Street is another great example with Julia the Muppet, who has nonverbal autism. They do a great job depicting her unique ways of communication. I actually think she does talk a little bit, but not a whole lot. And also how they navigate friendships. Full Little Muppets with Julia, who has autism. And another great representation is going to be Paolo. He is a new animated character on PBS, and he is actually voiced by an adult who is non-speaking, who uses a talker device, just like I showed you earlier, one of those little iPad devices. And so he actually has typed the script into his iPad, and he plays it and records it, and that's how he voices this character on a PBS show. We love to see another character getting added to the roster, because not only does it provide a great opportunity for parents to discuss autism with kids, but it also normalizes it a little bit and makes it feel less intimidating for these kiddos who may have peers or siblings or cousins impacted by this particular diagnosis. But To kind of circle back to the reason why this particular Barbie has given me a little bit of pause, it is because of the heavy involvement of the Autistic Self Advocacy Network. For those of you who don't know, the ASAN is one of the louder and larger voices when it comes to autism advocacy here in the United States. Typically, when people want to know something about autism, they're going to look to them or they're going to look to Autism Speaks. And Autism Speaks is a different can of worms that we might get into in another episode, but today I want to focus specifically on the Self Advocacy Network and some of the shortcomings that they have when it comes to advocacy and representation. I feel that it's important to talk about this because all eyes are on them now, thanks to the rollout of this fantastic Barbie doll, and it would be remiss of us to not talk through some of the implications of this hugely significant partnership. So let's get into it, and also for this episode, I am going to be looking a little bit at my computer because I want to be able to read direct quotes to you all from the website. To start with, let's talk about what the Autism Self Advocacy Network actually is. So if you navigate over to their website, they essentially are a coalition of people. I do believe it's listed that they include like providers and parents, but primarily it's individuals who want to advocate for autism representation in media and government, in businesses, in schools, just kind of all around in society. And while that seems like a really beneficial thing on the surface, once you start reading into kind of their mission and vision statements, as well as how they truly want to kind of take hold of and define everything it means to be autistic, that's where you kind of get into a little bit messier politics. A lot of the individuals who are associated with this network are very high functioning. And whether or not they mean this intentionally, they don't often pay much mind to or are aware of some of the situations going on with the more profoundly autistic cases. And again, I obviously haven't talked to everybody affiliated with the Self Advocacy Network. I've only spoken to maybe 2 or 3 people. They're very, very hard to get hold of. But the people that I spoke with and were able to kind of come at them with questions from maybe a more profound autism perspective honestly really displayed that they really weren't thinking about it that much. And so obviously that creates kind of a bigger issue for the spectrum at large. And they also contribute a lot of very confusing verbiage. And so we're going to kind of start there and walk through the mission and vision statement they have and why I feel it can be confusing, especially for people who may be outside of the spectrum. So their mission is this. The Autistic Self Advocacy Network seeks to advance the principles of the disability rights movement with regard to autism. The ASAN believes that the goal of autism advocacy should be a world in which autistic people enjoy equal access, rights, and opportunities. So far, this is all great. We work to empower autistic people across the world to take control of our own lives and the future of our common community, and seek to organize the autistic community to ensure our voices are heard in the national conversation about us. Nothing about us without us. And it's that last half that can get just a little bit sticky, especially the nothing about us without us. Because they made it very, very clear that they want to be the voice for autism and they want to empower all autistic people to speak. However, key point is a lot of these people are able to use spoken word to advocate for themselves, and not all of the autism community is able to do that. So I kind of took that question specifically to a representative of the ASAN, and I asked them just a question about a case study because I was curious as to where they had gotten this data, particularly pertaining to medical intervention. There was an article on their website talking about the Kennedy administration and how they were upset with the direction that this administration was going in treating autism as a medical condition, which I personally don't see an issue with. And so I wanted their opinion on it, being that they're one of the loudest voices and they want to be the go-to resource when it comes to autism. And I just said, okay, I noticed that on your website, you have an issue with this administration and you have done a survey, you've done some research. And according to your survey, 95% of people with autism do not want medical intervention or any type of medical research. And the representative I was speaking to said, yes, we have uncovered that. We do not want medical intervention. And I said, okay, that's great. Who did you survey? And they were like, well, we just emailed a list of participants and had them take the survey. And I said, okay, that's great. Did you send it to providers? Did you send it to parents? And the answer was no. And upon a little bit further digging, it became very apparent that the pool of individuals that they had based the study on were all very highly functioning autistics. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it has essentially swayed the narrative, right? So now they're on the website saying that we, the people with autism, do not want medical intervention, but they're only speaking on behalf of one end of the spectrum. And when I asked her why level 2 and level 3 autistics were not included in the study, to basically explain to me that, well, they are welcome to participate, they just have to take the survey independently, which kind of defeats the point, because for a large majority of these individuals, their reading skills might not be so great. They may not have the fine motor skills to answer a survey. They may not talk in language to be able to fill out an open form question. There's just a whole lot of things that it's not accessible for them. And when I brought this to her attention, she just kind of stood there for a minute, and you could see that genuinely that thought didn't quite cross her mind. And that is where my concern sparked a little bit, because I thought to myself, all right, so if this is a network that's go-to for autism, they're missing so many voices. This is an issue and people need to be made aware of it. So starting with the mission and vision already, it can get a little bit dicey, but they go on to say, self-advocacy means working as a community to take control over how society views disabled people, whether those conversations are about our own lives or about autistic people as a whole in our society. And again, these are direct quotes from the website. You can go look it up. It's on the first page. Scroll all the way down. You'll see this highlighted there. Again, lots of emphasis on self-advocacy while kind of brushing aside the idea that not everybody with autism is going to be able to advocate independently. Every disabled person is a self-advocate, they go on to say, and that there's no such thing as being too disabled to be a self-advocate. I respectfully disagree. There is such thing as being too disabled to be a self-advocate, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that is going to be a large majority of our profoundly autistic individuals, because they are not independent enough to be able to feed themselves or to be able to go to the bathroom on their own or to be able to be left alone safely because of the struggles that they have sometimes. And so that's essentially saying broadly that we don't want to pay attention to these people. We're going to pretend that they don't exist, because there's no such thing as someone with autism who's too disabled to be a self-advocate. Everybody can be a self-advocate. Well, that's simply not true. Another quote that I found a little interesting, it says that sometimes disabled people are placed under guardianship, which means that someone else, like a parent, gets to make choices for that person. And we at the ASAN believe this is wrong. Guardianship takes choices away from disabled people. And this is honestly a really sad way of looking at autism. To summarize guardians simply as somebody who takes away choices for disabled people, it's a sad viewpoint to have, because not only does it minimize the importance of caregivers and the importance of that support system, but it also minimizes the experiences of people with autism who do need that level of support. I mean, I was a caregiver for 7 years, and I got the opportunity to kind of step in and be that person, that cheerleader, that support system. And it's a huge honor. And it also allows these people a certain level of freedom, right? Like, part of my role as a caregiver was to step alongside these kids and these adults to be able to help them achieve their dreams, right? Whatever that may be, because they couldn't do it alone. And so for a huge voice like this organization to come alongside and say that, oh, guardianship is wrong and we believe that care is toward the bottom of the intro, and it says, we at the ASAN are the experts. As autistic people, we know more about autism than anyone else. We know the problems that autistic people face, and we have a lot of ideas about how to solve them. We're just going to take this one sentence at a time. To say we are the experts is not going to be the best method of proclaiming your expertise, because I've talked to people from this network and I know that they don't know about profound autism, and I know that they don't understand the weight that these caregivers and that these families are up against. And then they say, as autistic people, we know more about autism than anyone else. Well, the idea of if you know one person with autism, you know one person with autism isn't just true for people who are not part of the community. I do believe it's also true for people who are autistic. And to quote Temple Grandin again, she does a really great job explaining this. She said to an interviewer just a couple of months ago, I think it was, that she wished that they had kept the Asperger's label. And the interviewer asked her why this was, and she said, because it's really hard to explain the idea of autism being so individual when I have the same diagnosis as somebody who is never able to be left alone or to feed themselves or to toilet independently. She's like, it's confusing for me to wrap my brain around because we are just so completely different. And whether you agree with her or not, she kind of hit the nail on the head when it comes to being an expert on autism is really, really hard, and you can't put yourself in the situation of saying, oh, I know more about it than anyone else. Not even the ASAN is able to do that, I don't believe, because the majority of them are going to be a more higher functioning. Again, this is just based on my own personal interactions and my own personal research. Maybe there's a niche of this organization that represents profound autism, but I haven't found it yet. Being that they are heavily influenced by higher functioning individuals, they don't know all of the problems. And I think it's important to remember that, especially just speaking directly to the ASAN, that when you're going to represent a people group, it's important to do your best to be well educated to represent that entire people group. And that means across the spectrum. Not everything the Autistic Self Advocacy Network is doing is bad. Barbie is a perfect example of something good that has come out of that network, and I certainly don't fault Mattel for partnering with them. Right now, the Autistic Self Advocacy Network is one of the loudest voices in autism advocacy, and whether that's going to be good or bad, it's up for time to decide. We're just going to have to see where this goes. But it's a great reminder and encouragement for us to continue to be diligent in doing our own research, in listening to the voices of the people in our community, in our schools, in our churches, our neighbors, and also to do our own independent research. There are a couple absolutely fantastic websites put together by parents, by caregivers, by siblings, by people with level 3 autism who have used talker devices and speller devices to kind of communicate their experiences. And I highly encourage people to check out those websites, which I will link down below. They are excellent resources if you're just looking for a little bit of a more holistic view on the autism experience. At the end of the day, though, whether or not you agree with the design or the partnership choice, Autistic Barbie has given us a great excuse for discussion and is hopefully going to take us one step closer to a more inclusive world. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Alethea Project. If you liked, loved, or hated what you heard, please feel free to comment down below, like and subscribe, and we hope to see you next time.